Hi everyone. Tonight we're going to talk about something that's probably been staring back at you every morning, but you've been too polite to bring it up. You wake up, swing your legs out of bed, and bam, they creak like an old wooden floor in a haunted house. Your knees feel like they've been on a long hike through the Rocky Mountains. And don't even get me started on the calves. They used to be tight, toned, and springy. Now they just sit there like two overcooked dumplings. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Also, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing the little map we build together each night. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. It all began with a flight of stairs, just 12 steps. I had climbed them for years without thinking, but one random Tuesday morning, I stopped halfway, winded, and my knees felt like they were made of gravel. My legs burned, not the good kind of burn from a workout. This was the deep, aching reminder that I hadn't been taking care of myself the way I used to. I remember sitting at the top of the stairs, catching my breath, and thinking, so this is how it starts. The slow slide into stiffness, weakness, and eventually, let's be honest, dependence. That night, I looked down at my legs like they were old friends I hadn't spoken to in years. And the truth was, I'd neglected them. See, old age wisdom says, you're only as young as your legs feel. At the time, my legs felt like they belonged to a retired pirate who had been skipping leg day for 3 decades. I realized I needed a change, not just movement, but fuel. What was I feeding my legs? Back then, my diet was the usual American midlife disaster: toast, coffee, processed snacks, and the occasional healthy frozen meal that tasted like cardboard but promised it had vitamins. It's funny how much we trust labels instead of listening to our bodies. I started asking myself, what if food could do more than just keep me alive? What if it could make my legs feel 40 again, even if the rest of me was closer to 70? That question sent me down a rabbit hole. I read articles, watched lectures, and even tried a few bizarre food trends. For the record, celery juice didn't make my knees less creaky, it just made me visit the bathroom a lot. But eventually, I landed on something real. 3 specific dishes that didn't just taste good, they worked. Here's something quirky. Flamingos stand on one leg to conserve body heat. At this point in life, I could barely stand on 2 without feeling like I was about to tip over. So I started making changes, not all at once, but gradually, 1 meal, 1 recipe, 1 ingredient at a time, and just like that, food became my medicine. Not in a preachy way, not in a flavorless, everything way. Just real meals, with simple ingredients that gave my legs what they'd been missing all along: strength, circulation, and that quiet hum of energy that lets you know you're not done yet. But don't worry, I'm not about to turn this into a cooking channel. I still burn toast. What I am going to do is walk you through these 3 dishes and why they matter. Because if your legs are dragging, swollen, or just feel like they're 20 years older than the rest of you, there's a very good chance your kitchen is part of the problem and the solution. So get comfy. Maybe imagine yourself sitting by a window with warm sun on your knees, and let me tell you how I turned my legs from creaky to confident. Starting with a few ingredients you probably already have in your pantry. Let's talk about the enemy you never see coming: inflammation. It's not dramatic. It doesn't come with warning sirens or flashing lights. But it sneaks into your joints like a thief in the night and steals your mobility. bit by bit. For years, I thought my legs were just getting older. You know, part of the package. A little stiffness here, some swelling there, an occasional wobble when standing up. But then I learned about chronic inflammation, and suddenly it was like someone turned on the lights in the haunted house. My symptoms weren't just age. They were a chemical fire smoldering under the surface. Old age wisdom says, fire that warms can also burn. And that's exactly what inflammation does. A little bit. Sure, it's your body's way of healing, but when it lingers, it starts breaking down tissue, weakening your muscles, and turning your once supple joints into creaky hinges. And the worst part, we feed that fire without even realizing it. I had no idea that my beloved breakfast toast, slathered with margarine, was full of seed oils linked to inflammation, or that those harmless crackers I munched on were basically inflammation in a box. No one tells you that sugar doesn't just rot your teeth, can rot your joints too. Then there's the sodium trap. I used to think the only danger of too much salt was bloating. But it turns out excessive sodium stiffens arteries and blood flow to your legs. That tightness in your calves at night might not be from the walk, it might be your salty afternoon snack. Here's a quirky fact. Alligators can regenerate lost limbs in their youth. Sadly, humans didn't get that deal. But we can regenerate strength and elasticity if we stop dousing our bodies in junk that slows healing and blocks. Circulation, thus, is where food becomes more than calories. That becomes your repair kit. When I started paying attention to anti-inflammatory ingredients, my entire body responded. And I'm not talking about expensive superfoods shipped from a mountain in Peru. I mean garlic, ginger, leafy greens, turmeric, berries, things your great-grandmother would recognize and probably grew in her backyard. Of course, not everyone agrees on the science. Some experts argue inflammation is more about genetics than food. Others insist it's tied to stress or sedentary lifestyle. Truth, it's all connected. I noticed that when I changed how I ate, I also started sleeping better, thinking clearer, and most importantly, moving easier. At one point, I had to use a cane. My right knee would lock up without warning, and every step felt like dragging a bowling ball. But after a few weeks of cutting the inflammatory clutter from my plate, I began to notice changes. Not huge at first, just subtle things. Less stiffness in the morning, a longer walk before needing to sit, and that glorious moment when I realized I hadn't reached for my cane in days. I also started reading labels, not like a detective, but like someone who actually cared about what was going into my body. It was shocking. Some so-called healthy cereals had enough sugar to fuel a toddler army. I tossed them out, replaced them with oats, nuts, cinnamon. My joints thanked me. Most dramatic shift came when I stopped drinking soda. I used to justify 1 glass a day. Just a little fizz, I'd say. But that syrupy stuff was wrecking my insulin levels, spiking inflammation, and causing my legs to feel twice their age by evening. When I finally ditched it, my energy leveled out, and I swear even my ankles looked less puffy. So if you're sitting there, thinking your legs are just aging on schedule, ask yourself, what's fueling them? Are you feeding the fire or calming it? Next up, I'll tell you about the first dish that truly turned things around for me. It's warm, comforting, and packs an anti-inflammatory punch, so sneaky, you'll forget it's healthy. There's something about a warm bowl of stew that feels like a hug from the inside. When I first started looking into anti-inflammatory foods, I wasn't expecting much. Honestly, I thought I'd end up gnawing on raw spinach and choking down. Bland smoothies that tasted like wet grass. But then I discovered turmeric, lentil stew, and it changed everything. Let me paint the picture: a thick, golden broth bubbling gently on the stove, the scent of cumin and garlic wafting through the kitchen, a slight peppery kick in the back of your throat, softened by the earthy richness of lentils and carrots. It's the kind of dish that makes you feel like you've been eating wrong your whole life. Old age wisdom says, food made with hands heals better than pills. And I believe it. The first time I made this dish, I had no idea I was crafting a little bowl of leg rejuvenating magic. I just wanted something warm on a rainy afternoon. But after a week of eating it regularly, I noticed my knees weren't as stiff, and climbing stairs didn't sound like someone crinkling aluminum foil. The secret, of course, is turmeric. That golden powder isn't just a spice, it's anti-inflammatory. Royalty. It contains curcumin, which researchers have been geeking out over 4 years. Curcumin reduces swelling, supports circulation, and even helps regenerate muscle tissue. Of course, there's always academic debate about how much turmeric you need to see real benefits. Some say food isn't enough. You need supplements. But I say, if it tastes good and helps, I'm in. Add in lentils, and now you've got plant protein and fiber. They keep you full, stabilize blood sugar, and help maintain muscle mass, something your legs desperately need after 60. Carrots bring beta-carotene and a touch of sweetness, while garlic adds not just flavor but circulation-boosting compounds. And here's a quirky fact to keep things spicy. In medieval times, turmeric was so rare in Europe, they thought it was a relative of saffron and reserved it for royalty. Look at us now, casually tossing it in our stews like culinary aristocrats. The first time I served the stew to a friend, who'd been battling achy knees worse than mine, she went quiet for a minute. Then she said, "I think my joints just exhaled." I laughed, but honestly, that's how it felt. Like your legs finally stop yelling at you. And the best part, this dish is easy. 1 pot, minimal chopping, forgiving measurements. You can make a big batch, store it in the fridge, and eat it throughout the week. I often top mine with a dollop of Greek yogurt or a sprinkle of pumpkin seeds, depending on my mood. After about 2 weeks of incorporating the stew into my weekly routine, usually for lunch or dinner, I realized I was walking farther without even noticing. No pain, no limp. My ankles weren't puffing up by evening. I even caught myself bouncing a bit as I walked up a ramp at the grocery store. You know, that little spring in your step that disappears sometime after 50 and never leaves a note. This stew brought it back. Now, I'm not claiming it's a miracle. I didn't grow a new pair of bionic legs. But it was the beginning of real, tangible change. And more importantly, it was sustainable. This wasn't a weird powder or imported tonic. It was a homemade dish that I looked forward to. So, if you're tired of wincing every time you stand up, or pretending your leg cramps are just a little stiffness, try starting with a single bowl. Stir it slowly. Let the aroma fill your kitchen, and imagine your legs smiling from the inside out. Coming up next, I'll share the dish that turned me from can't stand too long to sure. Let's walk the whole park. I never used to be a fish person. The smell, the bones, the uncertainty of whether it was overcooked or still staring at MIT just wasn't my thing. But then I hit a wall. My legs were sore by midday, my energy was sagging, and honestly, I felt like I was walking through molasses. Something had to give, so I tried what every wellness article seemed to scream about. Omega 2-3 fatty acids. Q. Grilled salmon with greens. Now, I wasn't expecting fireworks. I thought, great, I'll choke down some flaky pink fish and a handful of spinach and call it a day. But let me tell you, this meal slapped. Warm, crisp-edged salmon seasoned with lemon, olive oil, and fresh herbs, served on a bed of sautéed kale and baby arugula. It was like eating power in a bowl. Old age wisdom says, when the legs are strong, the heart follows. And salmon might just be the MVP in that game. It's rich in EPA and DHA, 2 types of omega-3 south that reduce inflammation, lubricate joints, and promote blood flow. That means fewer cramps, less stiffness, and smoother movement overall. It's like WD-40 for your knees. And those leafy greens, don't sleep on them. Kale, arugula, and Swiss chard aren't just trendy. They're packed with magnesium, potassium, and nitrates. Those minerals don't just help your muscles recover, they help them perform. After a few weeks of adding this dish into my dinner routine, my legs actually stopped complaining after long walks. They felt, dare I say it, young. Now, here comes the academic tug of war. Some nutritionists argue that plant-based omega-3s, like from chia or flax, are just as good as fish-based. Others say the conversion rate in the body is too low, and you're better off going straight to the source. I say, eat both. Sprinkle your chia, but don't be afraid of a good piece of fish either. Here's a fun, off-topic fact. Salmon can swim upstream for miles, literally jumping waterfalls to get back to where they were born. Imagine having legs with that kind of stamina. I'm not saying grilled salmon will turn you into an aquatic athlete, but I will say I stopped needing to rest halfway up my stairs after I started eating it regularly. And yes, I was skeptical. I used to think fish was a once-a-month thing. Now it's in my fridge weekly. I grill it on Sundays, slice it over salads, mash it into patties with some herbs and oats. Versatile, flavorful, and honestly a bit addictive once you know how to cook it right. Here's what I noticed most. My circulation improved. My feet, which used to be cold even in July, started warming up. I could walk for an hour without that heavy, dragging sensation in my calves. And bonus, my skin started looking healthier too. Like the color came back into my legs. Not just function, but life. One night, I met an old friend for dinner. We hadn't seen each other in years. As we got up to leave, she looked at me and said, "You move like you're in your 40s again." I laughed. "It's the fish," I said. She thought I was joking. So if your legs feel like they're stuck in slow motion, and your energy's hiding under a rock, consider this combo: grilled salmon, dark leafy greens, a drizzle of olive oil, and a squeeze of lemon. It's not fancy, it's not complicated, but it works. And if you're not a salmon fan, try trout or mackerel. Heck, even sardines if you can get past the smell. Your legs don't care how gourmet it is, they just want to move like they used to. Next up, I'll share the colorful, carb-friendly bowl that gave me the daily boost I didn't know I was missing. There's something satisfying about a meal that looks like a rainbow and eats like comfort. I call it my sweet potato and chickpea bowl, but honestly, you could call it leg day in a dish. It's warm, grounding, and carries this weird superpower. It makes you feel full without making you feel heavy. And for someone like me, whose legs used to feel like sandbags by mid-afternoon, that was a game changer. Picture this: roasted sweet potatoes, soft on the inside, crispy around the edges. Spiced chickpeas tossed with cumin and smoked paprika, sizzling in a pan. a handful of fresh parsley, a dollop of yogurt, maybe a squeeze of lime. You don't just eat this bowl, you build it. And with every layer, your legs get a little more love. Old age wisdom says, the roots below feed the strength above. Sweet potatoes are root vegetables, and they live up to the hype. Packed with beta-carotene, potassium, and slow-release carbs, they're like fuel tanks for your lower half. No sugar crash, no sudden nap attack, just sustained, steady energy that powers you through your day. The chickpeas, absolute legends, full of fiber, plant protein, and magnesium, they help with muscle function, recovery, and even circulation. After a week of eating this bowl regularly, usually for lunch, noticed I stopped needing that 3 p.m. leg stretch. You know, the one where you pretend you're checking the window but really just need to shake out the pins and needles. Yeah, that. Here's a quirky tidbit for you. Chickpeas have been found in 7,500-year-old archaeological sites. Our ancestors weren't messing around. They knew good food when they found it. And apparently, they knew how to keep their legs moving long before gyms and step counters. Now, there's this ongoing academic conversation about carbs, whether they're good, bad, or somewhere in between. Some experts argue we should ditch them entirely after a certain age. But I say, balance. When you pair complex carbs like sweet potatoes with fiber-rich legumes, you don't just eat, you nourish. My body responds to that combo like a slow clap of approval. The bowl also gave me back something I didn't know I missed. The joy of standing while cooking. I used to dread kitchen time. My knees would bark, my heels would ache, and after 10 minutes, I'd be looking for the nearest chair. But once I started fueling myself properly, my endurance changed. I could stand longer, stir with intention, even dance a little to the oldies on the radio without needing an ice pack afterward. One morning, after eating this dish 3 days in a row, I walked around the block. Twice, not because I had to, because I wanted to. My legs felt light, like they remembered how to move with ease. I even threw in a few lunges, just to see if I could. Spoiler, it wasn't graceful, but I didn't fall. And let's not forget, flavor matters. If healthy food tastes like cardboard, you won't keep eating it. But this dish, it's a flavor bomb. Smoky, sweet, creamy, zesty, it checks every box. Sometimes I swap the chickpeas for black beans, or toss in some quinoa if I'm feeling fancy. It's flexible, forgiving, and friendly to your knees. I've shared this recipe with a dozen friends. One of them, 74 years old, and swore she'd never give up frozen dinners, now texts me weekly about her magic bowl. She says it's the first lunch she's ever made that doesn't leave her bloated or sleepy. Her ankles have stopped swelling. Her legs look more toned. She even bought sneakers. I'm not saying it's a miracle, but I'm not saying that either. Coming up, I'll tell you what I had to stop eating, because building leg strength isn't just about what's on your plate. It's also about what isn't. Now, before we go any further, I've got to come clean. Not everything I ate during my leg transformation was a win. In fact, some things were downright traitorous. I'm talking about the hidden culprits, the food that seemed innocent. Behind the scenes, they were quietly turning my legs into lead. Let's start with the big one, refined sugar. I know, we've all heard it before, but I used to think a little sugar never hurt anyone. I had my daily cookie, my weekend slice of cake, and the occasional caramel drizzle in my coffee. Comfort food, right? Well, that comfort came at a cost. My joints ached more the day after I indulged. I felt swollen, like someone pumped up my calves with a bike pump. My morning walks became slower, stiffer, and less satisfying. Old age wisdom says, sweet on the tongue, bitter in the knees, and I lived it. Sugar triggers inflammation, messes with blood flow, and causes blood. Sugar spikes that make your legs feel like jelly 1 hour and bricks the next. And it wasn't just sugar, oh no. I had a fling with ultra-processed snacks, crackers, chips, even those healthy granola bars. They claimed to be packed with fiber and whole grains, but a quick look at the ingredient list told the truth. Hydrogenated oils, sodium galore, and more preservatives than a museum exhibit. Here's where the academic conversation heats up. Some argue that small amounts of processed food are manageable. Everything in moderation, they say. But moderation quickly became a habit, and a habit became a lifestyle. And that lifestyle was eating away at my mobility. Now, here's a quirky little tidbit. Flamingos get their pink color from what they eat, mainly shrimp. So if food can literally change the color of a bird, don't tell me it can't change the way your legs feel. Eventually, I had to lay down the law. Out went the crackers. Goodbye, store-bought sweets. I swapped out sugary cereal for overnight oats with cinnamon and fruit. Instead of chips, I roasted chickpeas or had a handful of walnuts. Was it hard at first? Yeah. My taste buds missed that dopamine hit. But then something weird happened after 2 weeks. My cravings changed. Sugar tasted too sweet. Processed. Snacks tasted fake. My energy steadied. My feet weren't puffy at night. I stood longer in the shower without shifting my weight from leg to leg. One evening, I caught myself dancing while folding laundry. That hadn't happened in a decade. Even my shoes fit better. I know that sounds ridiculous, but reducing inflammation meant my feet weren't bloated all the time. My walking became more fluid, more confident, like I wasn't dragging invisible anchors behind me. There's one more thing I cut out that made a massive difference. Soda. I used to say I only had one a day, and that made it okay. But those liquid sugars and phosphoric acid were messing with my muscle recovery, not to mention my bones. Within a week of quitting, the evening cramps in my calves all but disappeared. Coincidence? Maybe, but I wasn't going back to find out. People ask me now, do you miss those snacks? Honestly, no. Not when I can walk up hills again without stopping halfway. Not when I can sit cross-legged on the floor and get up without grunting. Like an old engine. It's funny, we spend so much time trying to add things to our life supplements, workouts, therapies, but sometimes what you take away does the real magic. Next up, I'll show you how to make this all sustainable. I built a rhythm that keeps my legs young without turning me into a kale-breaching health nut. By this point, you might be thinking, okay, but how do you actually keep this going? Because let's be real, anyone can eat a vegetable or skip soda for a few days. But building a rhythm that actually sticks, that's where the real challenge begins. And that's where I found something unexpected. Habit layering. Now, habit layering sounds like something from a productivity guru, but hear me out. I didn't change my entire lifestyle overnight. I changed one little thing at a time, manned then stacked it. I didn't just say, I'll eat better. I said, every time I make tea in the morning, I'll chop veggies for the day. It became a ritual. Tea equals chopping. No decision fatigue. No excuses. Old age wisdom says, routines are the rails for the train of life. And for me, those rails kept my legs from slipping off track. I also found that I had to make health convenient, or it wasn't going to happen. One prepped meals in batches. I washed and chopped everything on Sundays. I kept cooked sweet potatoes in the fridge like little orange lifesavers. I made salmon patties ahead of time so I could just reheat and eat. I even kept a batch of turmeric lentil stew in the freezer, labeled with a smiley face, and I got creative. I swapped my usual sit and scroll time with what I now call the 5-minute march. That's me walking slowly around the house during commercials or after meals. Just 5 minutes. No pressure, but it adds up. My legs stayed loose, my digestion improved, and I swear my mood did too. Here's a quirky truth. Octopuses have 3 hearts but only one beats when they swim. Isn't that wild? Makes you think maybe we're also designed for rest and rhythm, not constant overdrive. Now, the academic folks will tell you that building new habits after 60 is harder due to decreased neuroplasticity. That's science speak, for your brain doesn't rewire as easily. But I'd argue that desire is stronger than wiring. I wanted my legs back. I wanted freedom. So I rewired, slowly, one comforting meal and one small step at a time. I also had to learn a bit of grace. Some weeks I fell off. I ate the cookie, skipped the walk, had takeout 3 nights in a row, and instead of spiraling, I asked myself, okay, what's the next right step? Sometimes it was a bowl of chickpeas. Sometimes it was a nap. The key was to stay gentle but steady. And the best part, once these meals and movements became familiar, they stopped feeling like health routines. They became me, the woman who roasts sweet potatoes while humming Motown, the woman who walks while the kettle boils, the woman whose legs don't scream at her when she climbs, stares, or dances in the kitchen. It took a few months, yes, but it was never about perfection. It was about mobility, vitality, and joy. I wanted my legs to say yes when life said, let's go, and now they do. I hope this helped you see that it's not about chasing youth. It's about reclaiming strength plate by plate, step by step. Start with one dish, one walk, one choice that says, I want to move better. Stack the habit. Let it become your rhythm. Because trust me, when your legs start feeling 40 again, your whole life starts dancing to a different beat. Asterisk, so here. We are lights low, fan humming, and you've heard my story. Maybe your legs have been whispering for help too. Don't wait for a dramatic moment to make a change. Start small. Eat something warm and healing. Walk just a little farther. Let your body feel the difference and crave more. You're not broken, you're just waiting for the right rhythm. Let food be your friend, not your fix. Let movement feel like music again. And always remember, the best version of your legs is still within reach. Good night.